Give me your passport. You cannot go.
The cabin lights shimmered softly as the first-class passengers settled in, champagne glasses clinking like quiet secrets in the air. But all peace shattered when a young black man, calm, composed, dressed in a sleek charcoal suit, walked down the aisle holding a platinum boarding pass. A flight attendant's polite smile froze mid-air. Her eyes narrowed, scanning him up and down as if he'd taken the wrong seat or the wrong life. When he politely took his place near the window, her tone sliced the silence. "Sir, this section is for first-class passengers only." The passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably, sensing something ugly about to unfold. Seconds later, her hand moved faster than anyone could react. The sound of the slap echoed through the cabin. No one knew yet, but the man she just humiliated wasn't an ordinary passenger. And before this flight landed, her entire world would come crashing down. The cabin went silent after the slap. Every passenger froze mid-breath, eyes darting between the stunned man and the trembling flight attendant who'd just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The man's cheek burned red, but he didn't retaliate. He simply looked at her, steady, calm, and heartbreakingly disappointed. That silence cut deeper than any words could. Moments later, the captain's voice cracked through the intercom, unaware of the chaos brewing behind the curtain. The attendant's hands shook as realization began to sink in. What she'd done wasn't just an outburst. It was being recorded. A woman 2 seats away had her phone angled discreetly, her expression filled with disbelief and anger. The man slowly reached for a napkin and dabbed the corner of his lip, his movements precise, almost deliberate. He spoke softly to no one in particular. "I guess dignity still needs clearance to board." The line wasn't said for drama. It was truth spoken through pain. And it hung heavy in the air. When the plane finally landed, security met them at the gate. The video had already spread across social media before the wheels even touched down. The attendant was escorted away, her voice trembling with excuses. "He was aggressive. He didn't belong here. I was following protocol." But every word crumbled under the weight of the footage. Hours later, she sat in her small apartment, scrolling through comments that tore her image apart. Hashtags filled every corner of the internet. Justice at 30. First-class dignity. Who was? News anchors replayed the moment on loop. She had become the face of viral outrage, but what none of them knew, what no one could have guessed, was who that man really was. Because beneath that calm, dignified silence was a power she could never imagine. The kind of power that doesn't need to shout only to act, and when he did, it would be quiet, precise, and devastating. The story was only beginning. The next morning, headlines screamed her name. Every major outlet had picked up the story. Flight attendant assaults passenger in first class. But what sent shockwaves through the world wasn't the act itself. It was the revelation that came next. The man she had slapped was Elijah Cole, the newly appointed CEO of AeroVista Airlines, the very company that owned the plane she worked for. His face appeared on every news channel, not in anger, but with quiet restraint. Dressed impeccably in a gray suit, he stood before the media, declining interviews, offering no words of revenge, only a statement through the company's official account. Disrespect doesn't fly in the skies we build. Within hours, her suspension letter was issued. Her colleagues avoided her name like it carried a disease. HR called it a pending investigation, but everyone knew the verdict was already written. The once smiling attendant who welcomed passengers aboard was now a viral symbol of prejudice, a reminder of how quickly hate unmasked itself under the pressure of bias. Still, she clung to denial. She told herself it was a misunderstanding, that people were exaggerating. But every replay of the video told another truth. The glare in her eyes, the disdain in her voice, the way she flinched when he calmly handed over his boarding pass. Each frame was an unspoken confession. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from reporters, strangers, even relatives she hadn't spoken to in years. Some defended her, claiming she was under stress. Others wanted distance, fearing the association. Her apartment became a prison of shame and silence. Meanwhile, Elijah didn't seek sympathy. Instead, he quietly redirected the company's focus. While the world argued about racism, he was already planning something deeper, a complete overhaul of the company's internal culture. He announced an emergency town hall meeting with every senior executive, demanding transparency, empathy, and accountability. No one expected the calm, soft-spoken CEO to move like a storm. At that meeting, Elijah spoke for the first time since the incident. He didn't mention her name. He didn't have to. "We talk about turbulence in the air," he said, "but the real turbulence begins when humanity leaves the cabin." The boardroom fell silent. Those words echoed across every employee's conscience. Behind the scenes, legal teams began drafting statements, PR heads scrambled to salvage reputation, and training programs on diversity and inclusion were rolled out overnight. The world saw a company correcting itself. But for Elijah, it wasn't about image, it was about impact. And yet, as his reform spread across the industry, the woman who started it all watched her life collapse piece by piece. The airline terminated her contract. Her friends turned cold. Even her landlord hinted she should consider moving out before the lease renews. But what she didn't know was that fate hadn't finished with her yet. Elijah's silence was never indifference. It was preparation, because sometimes revenge doesn't roar. It reforms. And soon she would come face to face with the man she'd wronged, not in anger, but in a way that would strip away every illusion she'd ever built about herself. The flight had ended, but the lesson had just begun. Days later, she received a letter, hand-delivered, embossed with the Aerovista emblem. For a moment, her heart leapt. Maybe it was a chance to explain, to plead, but as she unfolded the letter, her hands went cold. It wasn't from HR. It was from Elijah, Cole himself. "You are invited to attend the company's annual Cultural Reform Summit as a guest. Attendance is mandatory." Her mind spun. Shame, confusion, fear, all tangled. Still, she showed up. The event hall shimmered with light and quiet grandeur. Executives, pilots, and staff filled the seats. On stage, Elijah stood, composed, confident, his presence commanding without effort. Cameras flashed, and the audience hushed as he began to speak. He didn't mention her name, but his eyes found her in the crowd. "A company is not built on aircraft or profit," he said, "but on the invisible air of respect we breathe together. When that air is poisoned, no one flies." His words struck like thunder wrapped in calm. Each sentence peeled away her defenses. He spoke of dignity, of equality, of silent biases that linger like turbulence no one acknowledges. Every line carried a weight she couldn't escape. Then the screen behind him flickered, playing a short montage. Not the viral video, but something else. It showed Aerovista's new initiatives: scholarships for underprivileged aviation students, mentorship programs for diverse employees, community outreach for inclusivity. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. And then, for a split second, her image appeared, paused mid-slap, before fading into black. Elijah's voice lowered, steady, but sharp. Sometimes one act of cruelty exposes an entire system of blindness. But the same act can also light the path to change, if we have the courage to face ourselves. Every heartbeat in the room seemed to stop. She felt tears well up, not from humiliation this time, but from the crushing weight of realization. The man she had wronged had chosen transformation over retaliation. As the applause thundered, Elijah stepped down from the stage, walked past her seat without a glance, and left through the side door. No words, no confrontation, just silence, more powerful than any revenge could ever be. And in that silence, she understood. Her downfall wasn't his doing. It was her awakening. That day, the world saw a leader. She saw her reflection, and for the first time, it terrified her. She sat alone long after the hall had emptied, the echoes of applause still faintly bouncing off the marble walls. For the first time in her life, silence didn't comfort her. It judged her. Everything she had once been proud of, her poise, her confidence, her professionalism, now felt like a costume she'd worn to hide what she didn't want to face. That night, she rewatched the video, not as the victim of cancel culture, but as the woman she truly was in that moment. Every flinch, every glare, every ounce of superiority, it stared back at her with brutal honesty. The person in that clip wasn't someone who lost her temper. It was someone who'd been trained by a lifetime of unspoken prejudice to believe she was above someone else. And yet, beneath all that shame, something shifted. For the first time, she didn't try to justify. She didn't defend. She just saw. Weeks passed. She moved out of her apartment, took up small work at a community center, helping underprivileged youth train for careers in aviation. No cameras, no statements, just quiet effort. Some days she faced whispers, cold looks, even recognition. But she kept going. Because redemption, she realized, isn't earned through apologies. It's built through service. Meanwhile, Elijah's reforms transformed Aerovista into the most inclusive airline in the country. The company became a symbol of change, not because of corporate PR, but because a single act of cruelty had sparked an entire cultural reckoning. Months later, at a community scholarship event, their paths crossed again. Elijah was there to hand out awards. She was among the volunteers organizing the ceremony. Their eyes met briefly. No words, no tension, just mutual understanding. He gave a small nod. She returned it, eyes glistening. In that single moment, forgiveness existed, not spoken, but real. As the crowd applauded the scholarship recipients, Elijah ended his speech with the same quiet strength that had carried him since that day on the plane. We all make mistakes in turbulence, but how we land, that's what defines us. She clapped with the rest of the audience, a tear rolling down her cheek, not of regret this time, but of release. Because in losing everything, she had found the one thing she never had before, humanity. And for everyone watching, the story wasn't about a flight anymore. It was about the landing.